All right, so let's take a look at creating the eye sockets. So what I'll generally do at this point, and there's a lot of shaping that needs to go on with the ears and their positioning and all this good stuff, is you sort of, if you have a nice sketch of a character, cool. If not, we just kind of keep building on this and talking about some fundamental stuff. But you look at the proportions, the shape, you try to think about, well, what am I trying to do here? Like, is this a cute cartoon character? Is it a adult? Is it, what is the personality? So as you're going through the generic character, your other character will start to form. What I mean by your other character is the character that you feel that might fit good into a movie or something later. And we'll rig and animate this character as well. So I'm going to go ahead and hit G or grab my grab brush here and just push in a little bit of where I think the eye sockets should go. And I'm staying conscious of the shape of the eye sockets, things like that. Something else I do is I'll pull this out just a little bit and I'll bring my brush down a little bit and I'll start to shape the nose area of my character, just sort of pulling this out. And what I tend to do with my cuter characters is where I think the eyeball, the pupil that will go in the eyeball will be, I sort of line that up with where the bridge of the nose meets essentially the forehead here, or the brow line. And so I start to pull these things out. I want a little bit more shape around this way. And then I'll pull this in, kind of creating like almost a box shape here. And let's bring this out just a little bit. So these down. Now, what really helps with this is I use this tool called the Dyn Topo Tool, and I look for the planes of the face, and I use this to sort of add additional geo to those areas. So let me go ahead and go to Wireframe so you can see this. Now with Dyn Topo on, and I generally go with, instead of relative detail, I'll go to brush detail. If you select, for example, your clay brush here, your clay strips brush, which is probably my favorite, and I bring this down, if you start to sculpt, notice that it's starting to add based on the size of your brush. So let's see how that looks in solid mode. See how it starts to add geo there? So what I'll do is I will first start with my flatten brush here, and I just start to flatten out stuff like this. So I'll hold shift, smooth out the area, and even as you're smoothing, notice that even that will sort of tweak the geo itself. So let's go here, I smooth, and then I add a little bit of flatten, and I just start to flatten out that bridge that goes all the way around inside the eye socket here. So just sort of flattening or solidifying that area. And you might notice too, like if you watch some other videos, they'll actually create an eyeball from this area. But I find for my art, if you treat things as separate geometric objects, like separate pieces of clay you're bringing in, you'll get much nicer results and a little bit more control. So let me show you what I mean by that. So now that I have this area broken up a little bit, it's flattened. So let's bring this down a little bit more and add a little more geo in there. So now I've got this nice bridge of the nose, that area in there. I'm going to hit tab and go to object mode, and I'm going to hit shift and A again, and I'm just going to add a UV sphere. And then I'm going to press S to scale this down, and then G, like George, to move it, and then let's just kind of position it in here. Then I'm going to hit S to bring this down again. Now, this, I'm sort of going to look at this as like, okay, well, say there's no eyeball here this is the eyeball with no eyelid, so it kind of fills that area there. All right, so let's scale this down a little bit. Okay. So what I'd like to do is have a separate sphere for an eyelid and a separate sphere for the top eyelid and the bottom eyelid for now. All right, so let's take a look. Well, how do I do that? Well, if you hold Shift and D, you'll notice it creates a copy. Then I'm gonna hit Escape, and I'm gonna hit Shift and D again, and I'm gonna hit Escape. And over here in our scene collection, let's kind of move this down a little bit here. You can see I have 3 spheres. So let's start by getting rid of, or just hiding the visibility of those 2, so we only have the top. And let's take a look at, well, how do I make this an eyelid, like an upper eyelid? Well, I'm gonna tab over and go to edit mode here. And I'm gonna select face mode. And here's our vertice If I press 1, if I hit 2, here's our edge mode, and an edge is essentially these guys right here, and then 3 is the face mode. So what I'd like to do is select all of these faces but cut half. Well, there's a tool, it's this Bisect tool down here, and what this will allow you to do is cut a line across an area and then delete half. But the way to do that is you want to select all of your faces. So a quick way of doing that, instead of having to marquee and drag, like you could grab a box select, and then you select it, and then actually, believe it or not, it didn't select the faces behind it. You actually have to be in a mode called X-ray mode, which we'll get into more detail later, which is this, and that'll allow you to select all of it. Another trick that I like to do, let's go back to solid, is I just press the A like Apple key and it'll select all of those faces for you. All right, so there's different times for different things. Then I'm going to grab my Bisect tool, right? And I'm going to just draw a line across this way. And I'm going to line this up just a little bit down the center. Now, if you look at the options here, you might, well, nothing really happened, you just have an orange line. Well, if you do clear inner, you can see this is considered the inner and the arrow pointing out is the outer. So if I want this to be the upper eyelid, I can do clear outer, which is out here. And I notice there's a hole here, so I'm going to hit fill, and that'll fill that cap. And there's a pretty good eyelid. So I'm going to hit tab and go to object mode. And what I'd like to do is just sort of rotate this up just a little bit. So something like this. I'm probably going to push this a little bit higher up here. I want to give myself a little room because I am going to add more clay around the eyelid going this way, but I think that's pretty good. I won't know for sure until I mirror it across, so let's go ahead and do that. So let's grab our modifier, and let's just select mirror and select the head here, and let's see how that looks. And I think it looks okay, but I think it could use a little shifting to the right. So let's select that, hit G, and just kind of shift it a little bit to the right, going this way. So we could duplicate this and flip it, but I think for now, it's good practice to just sort of bring in the other this lower eyelid, and practice all those steps again. So I'm going to hit tab, go to edit mode, make sure that I press 3 that I'm in face mode, and then I'm going to press A to select all with my Bisect brush, click down the center here. Let's actually do that again. I'm going to undo that. Let's do this, come on. So a trick is if you hold shift, it'll snap. And then we want to clear outer because we're doing the lower eyelid. And what's going on here? Oh, you know what? There we go. And let's try this again. And I'm gonna press 1, make it really straight. There we go. And well, this time I wanna clear inner because I went from the right to the left. And I wanna fill that. And then I'm going to hit tab and go to object mode. It sort of locks that in. Let's bring this one back, and I'm going to hit R. I'm just going to rotate that. And if you feel more comfortable, you can select this and just rotate it on the axis. So something like this. Now I'm going to hit G, because remember we shifted that to the right. Now the eyelid, the lower eyelid, depending on your character, tends to be a little bit either more pronounced or less pronounced, depending on how you want to do it. I tend to make mine roughly the same. So let's bring this down. Let's add a mirror modifier so we can see this in real time. And both of these tend to, I think they're a little bit too forward. I kind of like them to be, the nose to be more pronounced than my cartoony characters. So let's go ahead and hold shift and select both of these, and I'm going to go ahead and just grab my move tool here and shift these back a little bit more. I don't want them to get too lost. And then I'm going to have to do the same thing to the actual eyeball here. I'm going to have to shift that back a lot. And let's do the same thing where we're going to mirror this, and remember we actually need to move this over just a little bit. All right, now what we do, actually this needs to be, this is way too far out to the right, sorry. There you go, that's lined up a little bit better. We still need to add a little bit more cheekbone and eyebrow and all that good stuff. But for me, that looks pretty good. And it gives us a little bit more control. Now, if you're done with this, you can select both, anything that has a mirror on it, like all three, for example, and you can hit Control A here. Actually, I don't know if it does it to all anymore. It used to. Yeah, it doesn't. So let's leave that actually on for now. And then in the next video, maybe we'll take a look at shaping out a little bit more of the cheek nose area.